Hey guys, Quick Draw McGraw here. So, this tiny little 1917 propaganda piece blamed one man for the starting of World War One, but historians now think a little differently. So, this is actually one of three copies of this that exist in the entire world. So, what this was a propaganda piece that was given out to the Allied soldiers in 1917 during the World War One, and it was also dropped behind enemy lines of the Allies in 1917, mostly the Germans. And so what it did was it made fun of Kaiser Wilhelm II. So I'll show a little infographic of sort of like the interior pages of it. Now, there's only three of these in the world, and this is one of the three. The reason why is because they produced the pages on like this really sort of like this cheap paper. And after the war, people like got rid of them and whatever. But this is one of the surviving copies. So the reason why I bring this up is I like to talk about comic books and different kinds of comic books in this show. And we talked about the first comic book ever, the Mr. Obadiah Old Buck, that was uh, Rudolph Topfer created it, right, in French, originally in Switzerland. But this one is really interesting because it actually brings up the whole history of World War One and World War Two, and so we're going to talk about that. So we like to talk about on this show comic books. We like to talk about love. We like to talk about psychology, and we like to talk about history. So what's interesting is we're not going to talk about love, unfortunately, um, but we will talk about history and we will talk about kind of comic books and how they're used, although this is sort of a propaganda piece and whatever. Okay, so obviously World War One was horrible, and then what came out of that, was into World War Two, which is terrible. But a common misconception and what was put into this propaganda piece, obviously, was to try and get both sides to stop fighting, right? But the common misconception with World War One, and people really don't understand history, which is unfortunate, was this the cause of World War One was really can be framed as an acronym called MAIN, MAIN. And so I'm going to take you through what the reasons for World War One were with this infographic. All right. So M stands for militarization. Um, and what was happening was before World War One, there was a belief that military strength was really the key to national power. All right. So what was happening was European nations, they spent years expanding their armies and navies, and they made war seem like it was a practical solution to any sort of problem. And so what was happening at the time was Britain and Germany, they competed in a major sort of naval arms race. Obviously, Britain won, or the later on, given what we learned through history. And the other thing that was going on, so the A on Maine is alliances. So what was happening at the time was countries, they were forming defensive treaties, promising to protect one another if attacked, kind of like NATO today. And so this means that a conflict between two nations could quickly involve another, in many other nations. All right, so there was the Triple Entente, so that was the Allies. So this is Britain, France, and Russia, and then the Triple Alliance, which was the Central Powers, and then that was Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy, though Italy later joined the Allies. And so the other aspect of it was imperialism, and so European powers were competing for colonies and resources and global influence. And so rivalries over territory, especially Africa and Asia, were big, spices and that kind of thing. And there was increased distrust amongst the great powers as a result of that. And then there's also nationalism, and so this is the end, which is it brings bringing strong pride in one's nation or ethnic group. And so this nationalism, it fueled competition between countries and encouraged ethnic groups within empires such as the Austria-Hungary to seek independence. So, and I think a lot of you know from history classes what the spark was for World War I, and just became the melee of this whole thing. So it was really the Balkans, and they were known as the powder keg of Europe because of ethnic tensions and political instability. And really, the big day that set it all off was June 28th of 1914, when a Serbian nationalist assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand and heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne in Sarajevo. So that really made it crazy. And so, as I talked about what was, the alliances part of Maine, and I was actually the militarization, imperialism, and the nationalism. It became the melee of so that assassination triggered like this chain reaction. Um, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Russia mobilized to support Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia and France. And when Germany invaded neutral Belgium to attack France, Britain entered the war. And within weeks, basically, a regional conflict had become the first global war. And so that was really unfortunate for the whole thing. And so during the course of the war, these pamphlets, again, they were sent out to Allied soldiers first, obviously, and then they were put on artillery shells, and then they were ballooned behind enemy lines into the Triple Alliance, which became the Central Powers, which Italy fell out of. And so that was basically Germany, Austria, Hungary, to get them to realize who their leaders were and that they needed to stop fighting for Kaiser Wilhelm II. So that's what this was. So yeah, you're looking at a living, breathing copy of that thing from 1917. I think it's pretty cool. So people talk about, okay, well, why didn't World War I end sooner? And I do think that Germany did play a major part in that. The German leaders actually they repeatedly chose military escalation over compromise, which is pretty bad. And their pursuit of total victory was a major part of it. And unrestricted submarine warfare was bad. And the final offensive that they ran in 1918, and then also that all helped turn what might have been a shorter conflict into a devastating 4-year world war. Okay, claiming millions and millions of lives. The thing that we need to learn about this is that um, the defeat by Germany in 1918 and ending of the fighting for the peace that followed basically helped set the stage for another war, and that was the Treaty of Versailles. And so what happened with that is Germany was made to accept responsibility for the war. Again, made to accept responsibility for the war, although there was a lot of other countries involved, and pay heavy reparations, surrender territory, and sharply reduce its military. And so what happened was many Germans viewed the treaty as deeply humiliating. So the the downside of all that was obviously there was massive economic hardship in Germany. There's political instability, and later the Great Depression in Germany. and it weakened Germany's democracy so much that it allowed for a political party to gain support by promising to restore the strength and and overturn the treaty. So they fed upon that. And while the Treaty of Versailles was not the only cause of World War II, it really helped create a condition that led to the outbreak in 1939. So, what are the lessons from World War I? Um, you know, is that World War I and then actually World War II, the two things that we really learned is that World War I, the lasting peace cannot be achieved through punishment alone. And after World War II, the Allies took a very different approach by helping build former enemies through economic and international cooperation. And that really laid the foundation for a more stable and peaceful Europe. One thing that I would like to maybe talk about too. Another thing that was a good thing out of World War I, not a lot of great things, but personally, my sister and I, as a result of World War I, what happened in World War I was the ambulance drivers in World War I, they got together and they realized, okay, these wars are stupid. Why don't we have like my kid go to who lives in Britain or whatever, go to France, and then another kid that was in France go to Germany, and then they have, so that they could experience different cultures, and so there would be more people from different countries sharing experiences, getting to know each other, making friends, and all this other stuff. And then that became American Field Service, and that was by the ambulance drivers of World War I. So they really saw the pain and suffering of the war. And so that was a huge thing. So my sister, she went to Perth, Australia as part of the program, and I went to Vitoria, Spain. And so that was a really cool thing for us because we were able to kind of benefit from that program and check out different cultures and learn different people and things like that. So anyways, I think that's about it. But it's interesting because a major component again, guys, with this, with all throughout history, has been comic books in a way, right? I mean, it. They were doing it. They were doing their part, back then to try and stop, World War I by educating people that through comedy, right, that what we were doing was stupid, right, and the people that were running the whole thing and having these people fight and die were really just morons, right? And so that was a part of this to get people to realize that this was not a good thing, these wars, or at least World War I back then. So I think it's a really cool piece. It's kind of a piece of my collection that is completely off, base or whatever, different. So we did the He-Man episode last time, and I just saw this on the wall the other day, and I'm like, I should probably do a session on this. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, and we'll check you next time. All right, bye.